For almost a year, we've been keeping our distance. Isolated, alone. 1 in 2 Australians say they feel more lonely since the pandemic began. Around the world, we've seen people communicating with their neighbours from balconies. Milestone birthdays celebrated on Zoom, and offices empty as we work from home. These times when we normally come together, we're now apart. And the worry is it may be changing our relationships for good. Humans are innately social beings. We need our family and we need our friends. But according to a major study by a British anthropologist, we actually need an exact number of them. In the 1980s, this guy, Professor Robin Dunbar, calculated just how many friends and acquaintances we maintain in our social groups. It's known as Dunbar's number. His theory says the average person has 5 intimate friends. That's our closest support group. Then we have 15 best friends, 50 good friends, 150 we call friends, 500 acquaintances, and 1,500 people who you can recognise by sight. Dunbar's research also teaches us that in order to maintain that close circle of friends, they're the ones in that 5 and 15 ring, you need to invest a certain amount of time. For your closest friends, that's contact about once every 3 days. For your best friends, that's once a fortnight.
Each friend has to have a certain amount of time invested in them. So for your very close friends, that's something in the order of about 30 minutes per day.
The thing about the coronavirus lockdown is we haven't been able to spend that required amount of time with those inner layers to maintain those relationships.
It means you kind of may just have to renegotiate your friendships a little bit, just to establish that your friends still are your friends and haven't found somebody more interesting to talk to.
Instead, we've been spending time with different people. Perhaps they're your neighbours.
It's what neighbours do, isn't it, eh? Pop their heads over each other's fences.
Home, community and work generally are the spaces in which we're making connections. And so if we're spending less time at work, we should be thinking more about making these connections in our local community.
But as we've invested time and grown those relationships, they've come at the cost of others. Because we can only retain that number of 15 in our best friend circle, when one comes in, another has to go out. There's another important aspect to human relationships we've been missing, and that's touch. Touch is the first sense we develop in the womb. It's fundamental to us being alive. It's also something that we can only do with those who are closest to us. I've come here to the zoo to see just how primal our urge for belonging really is. Professor Dunbar found that the need for touch is something we have in common with these guys. If you've been to the zoo, you've probably seen the chimps doing this. They're not just picking lice out of each other. This is a very specific type of touch.
Yeah, so for these guys, touch is very important. So grooming is a big part of their social environment, and it just kind of releases those happy hormones. It makes them feel good. It's kind of like us having a massage.
And whilst we've been holding back from hugs, handshakes and massages, we've been missing the same endorphin release. But touch is something that we only feel comfortable doing with those inner circle of friends. Social distancing is keeping us apart and discouraging touch, but it's increasing our anxiety and feelings of separation.
A lot of the activities that we do in a social context, things like laughter, singing, dancing, eating socially, all these also trigger the endorphin system, and through that create this enhanced sense of bonding.
So as we head into the new year, when we normally get together with those closest to us, it's time to reconnect, have a hug, and put in the time to rebuild the relationships we've lost in 2020.